everyone, I'm Annette, and I have spent nearly 30 years as a top seller on eBay, scaling several stores, eventually transitioning to my high profit part-time model of today. While you can see some of those results in all my other videos, it took me 20 years of a lot of trial and error, a lot of stress sometimes to get where I am today. So I'm making videos like this to be that mentor, the mentor I wish that I had for you to achieve those same results without that 20-year learning curve.
Yay! Flippin' high gravy!
Okay, my mistake number one. Who knows what happens if you list something like this on eBay? They are strictly prohibited on eBay under the hazardous products category, so they will be removed. Even Craigslist won't let you list them. There are actually quite a few prohibited items in eBay's policy, but in almost every case, you can still sell things like these in other places. And I'll give you an example. Did you know there is a dedicated charts page on Facebook where this particular model would sell for $150? Here's something else I accidentally listed years ago on eBay, and it was promptly removed for its alleged hazardous properties. Now, even though this ornament has no working lights and it's only a replica, it was still removed. I went on Facebook and I found a Hallmark ornaments page. I sold it actually for more than I had it listed on eBay, and there were no fees. I wouldn't recommend selling everything you have on Facebook. That's a whole nother discussion. But just know that I have used dedicated pages on Facebook to sell all kinds of things that are prohibited on eBay. Do you want to hear about one of my biggest oops moments that cost me? I found this beautiful swung Vaseline glass, and I was in a rush to list some items that day, so I listed it for $100, and when it sold immediately, I did 5 more minutes of research only to find out that it was really worth about $1,000. But I learned a permanent lesson. Never rush the research on a better find. It takes a couple minutes more. Do the research. It was a huge mistake to not tell people that I was a reseller from the very beginning. I thought they wouldn't think it was a real job. I had all kinds of other unreasonable rationale. Now I tell everybody what I do. It's led to all kinds of opportunities and even to get inventory for free. Recently, one of my husband's friends invited me over to go over his mom's estate. She was moving to a retirement home. He let me have whatever I wanted for free. Tell me about your windfalls in the comments below. I'm really methodical and organized and careful about reselling, but I am human and I still make mistakes like everyone, even as recently as last week. I listed a brand new Bible in the box, but it had a small dent in the leather cover. I showed that dent really clearly in the second photo. I even listed that detail in the description like I do any important details, and I immediately got a return request. She actually sent me a picture of the dent that was already in the listing itself. Normally what I do with listings like that is just to make sure I'll message them, make sure they read the description. I didn't in this case because I thought, oh, it's really clear in the photos. Wrong move. She obviously didn't read the description, let alone look at the photos. But I have to take some responsibility here. I really should have listed it as new other rather than new. And I should have messaged her like I message all buyers if there's an issue like that, just to make sure it was an easily avoidable mistake. Probably like you, every week I make a list of which estate sales I'm going to or yard sales. I make the route. But many years ago, I would do that same thing without any thought about which companies were running the sales. And inevitably, I would get frustrated over and over, whether it was from rude staff or no bulk pricing or just unbelievably high prices where I would actually leave empty-handed. And here's how I fixed it. I started taking note of which companies were running the sales, where my best experiences were. And I made literally a list of all the companies whose sales I I was not going to go to anymore. It has made a huge difference in my treasure hunting overall, not to mention how much I pay for my inventory. Let me pause briefly for this bolo for you and show you a few sold listings. Vintage pens are constantly overlooked at estate sales, even yard sales, and I regularly find them. They've sold for me from anywhere from $50 to almost $500. Waterman and Schaefer are good brands to look out for, but they're also part of that excellent small category, small to store and small to ship. One of the first things I would tell a newbie reseller is to not panic buy. And this is what panic buying looked like for me when I was just starting out. If I had a weekend where I wasn't finding much, I would start to settle for inventory. I would buy things that weren't that great, or they didn't have a very great sell-through rate because they didn't sell often, because I thought I needed to find as much inventory as I had the previous weekend. And I remember specifically a weekend feeling desperate like that. I wasn't finding much, and a guy was selling a few tools. They were Snap-on brand for $100, and I thought, wow, it's Snap-on. I know that's a good brand. And the problem was my knowledge on tools was extremely limited, so it was pretty stupid to spend $100 on something I didn't know much about. I actually ended up selling those tools for $35 because I kept having to lower the price. They were really beat up and they were heavy to ship. Another panic buy I bought was this set of vintage Christmas dishes, still new in the box, for $75. My thinking was, oh, they're still new in the box, they will sell for sure. And I kept having to lower the price. Nobody was even looking at them. They were kind of an obscure brand. I eventually donated them because the price got so low, I couldn't stand the thought of actually shipping them. So today I have learned to not panic buy because A, I know that there's always more great deals, bulk buys waiting around the corner. It's just a matter of time. And B, I have plenty of excess inventory to keep me listing for months at a time. I know you probably do too. Every reseller I know has some kind of a death pile. This is one of my worst memories that happened to turn into an important lesson with an amazing outcome. I sold a water filter and a pair of shoes, and I accidentally reversed the address labels. Everything about it was stressful. How were they going to respond? How could this happen when I'm so careful? The guy who accidentally got the shoes wasn't answering my messages. Meanwhile, I learned that most buyers are very kind. And here's just how kind they were. The lady who accidentally got the water filter, she immediately returned it to me without me even asking. She kept reassuring me that everyone makes mistakes. When I finally got a hold of the guy who accidentally got the shoes, I think he heard the panic in my voice. He overnighted those shoes to me for $65 without ever asking for reimbursement. Of course, I did reimburse him. And hopefully you know that every buyer's phone number is tucked in the eBay order, which is how I finally reached him. When it was all done and they had received their correct orders, I really can't believe how nice they both were for such a major hassle. And that's honestly what I have noticed about almost all buyers throughout all these years, coming from a person who has sold thousands and thousands of items. So don't stress about an occasional mistake. And also, I have never made that mistake again. What I do now is anytime I box something up, I write a tiny word indicating what's in the box, which gets covered up by the address label. Now let's talk about the two things that I had to get right, the two things that I think every reseller has to get right if they are going to be a successful reseller. Comment below if you disagree with these two things, but I think most resellers would agree. The first one, of course, is fast and thorough research. And let me tell you what happened to my sister as she was learning this. You might have seen her in some of my other videos, but a few years ago, I took her to the first estate sale and she got pretty bored. She didn't want to look very much. And that happened several more times until she happened to find a valuable figurine for only $3 and it sold for over $200. Suddenly she was hooked and now she couldn't wait to go treasure hunting. It's really cute. But she would get frustrated when we would subsequently go sourcing just because she was relying on my knowledge on what to buy. So the assignment I gave her was to start practicing at home, going around her house, picking up any given item, looking it up on eBay. Does it sell? How often does it sell? How much does it sell for? And based on that knowledge, would she pick it up if we were to see it in the wild? Once she committed to practicing like that, it's pretty amazing how fast she got good at it. I know that that can happen for anyone. That's how it went for me as well. And now we kind of compete for who can find the best stuff. I told you there were two most critical tools to your success. And I've been reminded over and over that the other critical tool for your success is organization. But hear me out. You don't have to be an organization freak to be successful on eBay, but you do have to be an organization freak about your inventory. Other things can be a mess, like your shipping supplies, but you will be miserable if your inventory is not cataloged in some way. And even worse, if you are regularly canceling orders because you can't find them, your item is out of stock, eBay will start charging you higher fees, and eventually you don't get many chances and your account is suspended. And I still remember that time I couldn't find an item. Not kidding, I looked for about 2 hours. I finally gave up and I had to cancel the sale. What a waste of time and money. And here's where I went wrong. I'd grown to over 100 items in inventory, believing that I could still keep finding things based on my memory. But what I found was once you're over 100 items in inventory, that system is going to fail. Excel or Google spreadsheets do work well, but even though you don't need to buy inventory management software, I do recommend spending that $30 to $50 per month because not only does it solve the problem, it also gives you added benefits of tax details and sales insight, things like that. I have tons of plastic totes and shoe boxes with coded labels on them, and it corresponds with all my inventory. And I happen to use Flipwise and I love it. I am not paid to promote it, but every time I sell something, Flipwise will tell me exactly where that item is. This is how I look at it. I have to sell one $50 item per month to pay for that peace of mind. Before I took the plunge with Flipwise, I did use Google Sheets, which worked great, but it's hard to compete with Flipwise automatically populating all my information versus with Google Sheets, I had to add each line by line of information myself. I still recommend Google Sheets for a free service, and you want to just mark your places where all your inventory is. If they're in storage boxes, give them codes, then make that spreadsheet with one column of all your inventory, the second column of where that inventory is, and you want to use Control F, of course, every time you need to find an item. This guy's comment on my channel really hit home. He said, I'm disorganized and it cost me my top rated seller status. I had one too many I can't find it cancellations. I'll get my top seller status back in a month or two, but it's embarrassing and it's costing me money in higher fees. Getting better organized is my top goal for the new year. So good for him. He sees how important it is. Looking back, I wish I wouldn't have treated eBay like a hobby in the beginning. It didn't help me succeed. But when I reversed that thinking and treated it like the business it actually is, everything changed. And I started by putting a basic workflow in place, like shipping packages out every morning, whether I had one going out or 10. So whether you're a part-time seller like I am, or it's your full-time job, treating it like a legitimate business, then your success will follow. I've got one more good bolo for you with some sold listings, and these are called little minis, and you'll often find them in the kitchen, but I have found them in other places in the house. I've sold quite a few through the years. They have really taken on a lot of value. Definitely keep an eye out for them. I only had to make this mistake one time to learn my lesson, because I found a valuable ceramic bunny at an estate sale and the staff took it to the hold table for me. I don't call them hold tables anymore. They are hope it's still there when you get back tables. When I finally checked out, the bunny was gone. And I even, not long ago, I was at an estate sale and this guy was literally screaming at the estate sale staff because someone had taken his entire bag of what he had accumulated. But think about it. Are we really expecting the staff at estate sales to be security guards for our items when they are managing 15 people at one time at checkout? So never again. I don't even have my stuff held at yard sales anymore. I don't want to spend all that work sourcing items only to have it walk out with somebody else. If I have to put my stuff down in an unusual circumstance, I do manage to find places with the staff pushed way back, even covered up at times. I had a comment from Melissa who said she feels rushed and pressured to examine every single thing at a sale. And I would say that what would help to remedy that situation is, if you're just getting started on eBay, set certain limitations on what you will source. You might want to start with smaller items, definitely non-breakables, non-fragile items, and items you already know a lot about. And even if you don't feel you have a certain area of expertise, your own childhood can be a wealth of knowledge. Nostalgia sells all the time on eBay, and you can just source things that you grew up with. Very often, those items sell because they're not made anymore. Sourcing smaller items can be jewelry or miniatures or vintage Christmas, paper items, even pens, like I talked about in my bolo. On the flip side, and speaking from my own experience, nothing will overwhelm you more than buying a lot of big things and fragile items like dishes. However, mugs can be a really good beginner item to sell because they're so plentiful. You can get them for 50 cents to a couple dollars, and it does give you practice with shipping items that are a breakable, but they're not super delicate. This is funny to think about now, but when I was just starting out, I would check a buyer's feedback immediately when something sold. If it was bad feedback or they had zero feedback, I would sit and worry that there might be a potential problem that will happen. I would track all my packages, and if there was any delay, I would get all worried about that. What another waste of time and energy. Obviously, I don't do any of that anymore. And here's a note that I include with all my shipments that has made a dramatic difference in any potential issues that might arise with the transaction. Something I regret not taking advantage of sooner when I was just beginning is the eBay community itself. If you go on the eBay community page and you have a question or a concern, there will be tons of resellers that will weigh in, give you their take, and 9 times out of 10, you will get your question answered or you will get help. I've never used it before, but I've also heard positive things about eBay's Facebook page. Let me know if you've ever used it before. I would be curious about that. You'll also find it very helpful to network with other resellers. Successful resellers know the value of relationships in general. I've taken it a step further, and I try to make relationships with everyone I can, including the UPS office, the post office. Years ago, I actually had an issue with an expensive piece of artwork that I sent through UPS, and the driver left it out in the rain. It was destroyed. And I can't be certain that I would have been reimbursed anyway, but the owner of that UPS store advocated for me from day one and made sure I got every penny back. So especially you newer resellers, besides being your own boss, here are some more things that you can look forward to if you stick with reselling, like your first big sale. Every reseller remembers their first big profit. Here's mine. I made hundreds of dollars on this vase. You can look forward to selling hundreds of items if you list a lot, or if you just want to work part-time like me, you will still earn meaningful income. And the longer you stick with reselling, you will land on more opportunities like getting inventory for free at times, or selling privately and avoiding all the fees. You know what really separates the pros from the amateurs in any business, perhaps, is coming down to mindset. The best resellers I know are lifelong students, and they know it. They've mastered the basics, but they never stop learning. In this business, the moment you think you know everything, you will stop growing. And even my words here are only words from my experiences. I know there's always new ideas and better efficiencies out there. I'll leave you with some peace of mind about eBay, because after selling thousands and thousands of items on eBay and other platforms, I have had very few returns, problem customers, even scam attempts. So keep focusing on what you can control, let go of what you can't. eBay is the best job I have ever had.